Have you ever had the feeling that something is deeply wrong, not just with some specific aspect of your life, but with the very way we live as a society? That restlessness that arises when you look at the people around you, all following their seemingly normal and programmed paths, and you wonder if you are the only one who perceives the absurdity of all this. It is as if you have woken up inside a collective dream, but no one else realizes they are dreaming. This feeling is not new in human history, but perhaps it has never been as intense as it is now, when the speed, the noise, and the saturation of stimuli in contemporary life seem precisely calibrated to keep us distracted enough not to ask the truly important questions. The people who insist on asking these questions, who dare to look beyond the shiny surface of our civilization, often discover that they are not welcome. The more consciousness they develop, the more they feel displaced, misunderstood, and often actively rejected. Today, I want to explore why this happens. Why do human societies, throughout history, and especially now, tend to reject those who awaken to a broader awareness than the collective norm allows? To understand this phenomenon, we need to go back thousands of years and examine how human consciousness and social structures evolved together, often in contradictory directions. For tens of thousands of years, we lived in small hunter-gatherer groups. In these communities, survival depended on conformity. The group needed to function as a single organism, with each individual playing their role within a relatively simple social structure. The rules were clear, transmitted from generation to generation through traditions, rituals, and shared myths. The sense of identity was almost entirely derived from belonging to the group. There was not much room for the kind of individuality and questioning that today we associate with an elevated consciousness. This does not mean that our ancestors were not conscious in the basic sense, but their awareness was fundamentally directed outward toward immediate survival, toward the surrounding nature, toward relationships within the group. The agricultural revolution, which began about 12,000 years ago, did not fundamentally change this paradigm. Societies grew in size and complexity, but the basic premise remained. Conformity was essential for the functioning of the group. What changed drastically was the scale and rigidity of social hierarchies. With agriculture came food surpluses, cities, armies, empires. Humanity developed increasingly sophisticated systems for controlling large populations and coordinating their efforts. Organized religions, legal codes, divine monarchies all serve the purpose of keeping millions of people functioning together in predictable and productive ways. Human consciousness remained mostly directed outward, toward conformity with rules imposed from above. The conscious individual, the one who questioned the basic premises of the system, represented a potential threat to this carefully constructed structure. Think of the great questioners of ancient history, figures like Socrates in Greece, who was sentenced to death for corrupting the youth by teaching critical thinking, or Jesus of Nazareth, crucified for challenging the religious authorities of his time. Both, in essence, were inviting people to a deeper level of awareness, to look beyond the social conventions of their time and question accepted truths. And both paid the ultimate price for that invitation. This pattern repeats throughout human history. Those who invite society to awaken are often perceived as dangerous, blasphemous, subversive. The scientific revolution and the Enlightenment, beginning in the 16th century, brought a new dimension to this dynamic. For the first time, critical thinking and questioning of traditions became, at least in theory, socially approved values. Figures such as Galileo, Descartes, and Kant established new paradigms for human thought based on careful observation, methodological skepticism, and trust in individual reason. We might think this would mark the beginning of an era in which expanded consciousness would finally be valued and rewarded. But reality proved more complex. While science advanced in understanding the material world, new systems of social control emerged. Industrial capitalism created a new form of conformity, no longer based mainly on religious dogma or ancestral traditions, but on disciplined participation in the economic system. People were now free to question God or the king, but questioning the need to sell their time and energy in the labor market or the premise of infinite economic growth continued to be heresy. Expanded consciousness was acceptable within very well-defined limits, mainly when it produced technological innovations or economic efficiency. Thus, we reach the 21st century, where we find ourselves in a paradoxical situation. On one hand, we have never had so much access to information, ideas, and diverse perspectives. The internet and globalization have exposed billions of people to forms of thought that would have been unimaginable to their ancestors. Techniques and traditions for expanding awareness, from meditation to psychedelics, from critical philosophy to advanced neuroscience, are more accessible than ever. On the other hand, it has perhaps never been so difficult to integrate a truly expanded consciousness into everyday life within the existing social structures. The contemporary world is a machine of unprecedented efficiency, optimized for production, consumption, and information processing on an industrial scale. Our educational systems, workplaces, urban environments, social media all seem designed to keep our attention fragmented, our energy dispersed, our thinking confined within predictable and productive channels. The smartphone we carry in our pocket is simultaneously a window to all human knowledge and a constant source of distraction and superficiality. We have developed technologies that could free us to explore consciousness at unprecedented levels, but we use them mainly to keep ourselves busy and numbed. In this context, the person who seeks to develop a deeper and more integrated consciousness finds themselves swimming against a powerful current. When someone begins to awaken to more fundamental questions, when they begin to perceive the contradictions and illusions embedded in the systems they are expected to conform to without questioning, when they begin to see beyond the comforting narratives that sustain our way of life, that person inevitably becomes inconvenient. I want to pause for a moment to ask, do you also feel this deep disconnection in your daily life? This feeling that although we are more connected than ever through technology, something essential has been lost along the way? I know it can be hard to put into words. Many of us carry this weight in silence believing we are the only ones to feel this particular emptiness. But you are not alone in this. If this feeling resonates with you, share your experience in the comments. It can be as simple as writing, "I feel this disconnection when," filling it in with your personal experience. Your comment might be exactly what someone else needs to read today to feel they are not alone in their struggle. Sometimes, naming what we feel is the first step to transforming it. There are several reasons why people with expanded awareness are often rejected by contemporary society. The first and perhaps most fundamental is the discomfort they provoke. Imagine a person who has spent decades building their identity, their sense of purpose, their place in the world, based on certain premises they never deeply questioned. Maybe they dedicated their life to climbing the corporate hierarchy, or accumulating material goods, or rigidly following the precepts of their religion. And then they meet someone who gently but firmly questions those premises, who suggests that perhaps there is more to human experience than these limited structures can contain. The natural result is discomfort, often followed by defensive rejection. There is also a practical and economic reason. Our societies are complex machines that require a high degree of conformity to function without friction. We need billions of people to show up at their jobs, consume products and services, pay taxes, obey laws, all in relatively predictable ways. People with expanded consciousness tend to question this predictability. They may decide they prefer to live with less in order to work less, or direct their energies toward activities that do not produce measurable economic value. They may challenge established hierarchies or social norms they consider arbitrary. In short, they are not such reliable cogs in the great machine. There is also a political dimension to this rejection. Conscious people tend to see beyond the artificial divisions that often dominate political discourse. They realize that many of the conflicts that seem so important in the 24-hour news cycle are in fact distractions from more fundamental questions about how we organize our society, how we treat the planet, how we relate to each other. This broader perspective is threatening to systems of power that depend on the fragmentation of collective consciousness, on the division of people into groups that can be manipulated through fear and indignation. All this may sound discouraging, as if we are condemned to choose between blind conformity or social rejection. But there are reasons for hope. Throughout human history, there have always been individuals who awakened to deeper levels of consciousness, and gradually, over time, some of their insights were incorporated into the collective consciousness. Ideas that were once considered dangerously subversive, such as the fundamental equality between all people or the importance of ecological sustainability, are gradually becoming part of common sense, at least in theory, if not always in practice. And perhaps we are entering an era in which the expansion of consciousness is no longer a luxury or a personal choice, but an evolutionary necessity. The challenges we face as a species, from climate change to structural inequalities, from artificial intelligence to genetic engineering, demand a level of integrated and systemic consciousness that simply was not necessary in previous eras. The old ways of thinking, fragmented and reductionist, are not enough to navigate the complexities of the world we are creating. This leads me to a possible alternative explanation for the rejection that conscious people experience. Perhaps it is not only because they represent a threat to the established order, but because they represent an evolutionary stage for which most of us are not yet ready. As a species, we are in an uncomfortable transition between modes of consciousness. We still carry mental and social structures adapted for a world that is rapidly disappearing, but the consciousness we will need to thrive in the future is still emerging, still fragile, still a minority. If you're one of those people who feels this expansion of consciousness happening within yourself, who often feels out of place in a world that seems blindly to follow routines and conventions that you can no longer accept without questioning, know that your discomfort is not a defect to be corrected, but possibly a sign that you are moving in the direction our entire species will eventually need to follow. Your struggle is not only personal, but part of a larger evolutionary process. That does not mean it is easy. The loneliness of feeling different, the frustration of seeing what others seem unable to see, the exhaustion of constantly swimming against the current, all of this is real and can be painful. But there is also joy and freedom on this path. There is an expansion of experience, a depth of understanding, an authenticity of being that compensates for the challenges, and there is community. Although they may be a minority, conscious people exist in every culture, every social class, every profession. Finding these connections, creating spaces where expanded consciousness is valued instead of rejected, is one of the challenges and pleasures of this path. These communities may seem small compared to the large social structures that dominate our world, but they have a resilience and influence that often exceeds their apparent size. What can we do then if we find ourselves in this position of greater consciousness and consequent social displacement? First, we need to have compassion for ourselves and for others. The expansion of consciousness is not linear or uniform. We all have areas of our lives where we are more conscious and areas where we remain stuck in automatic patterns. The person who seems completely unconscious in one dimension may be deeply insightful in another. And we are all doing the best we can with the mental and emotional tools we have developed so far. Second, we can seek ways to translate our expanded consciousness into effective action in the world. It is not enough to see more clearly if that insight is not translated into ways of living and creating that express that clarity. This may mean making radical changes in one's own life, finding work more aligned with your deepest values, creating art that expresses your vision, cultivating relationships based on authenticity rather than social convention. Or it may mean working within existing systems, bringing elements of expanded consciousness into institutions that desperately need them, whether a school, a company, or a community organization. Third, we can develop the ability to navigate between different levels of consciousness as needed. There are moments in which we need to connect with people operating from structures of consciousness different from our own, developing the flexibility to do this without compromising our own integrity, without judging others, and without losing ourselves, is a vital art for anyone on a path of expanding consciousness. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, we can cultivate patience. Changes in individual consciousness happen slowly, over years and decades. Changes in collective consciousness happen even more slowly, over generations and centuries. Human consciousness is evolving, but not at the accelerated pace of our news cycles or technological updates. It is evolving at the deeper pace of cultural and biological transformation. Looking to the future, it is impossible to predict exactly how this tension between expanded consciousness and social structures will resolve itself. In his book 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, historian Yuval Noah Harari suggests that the coming decades may see a bifurcation of humanity between a small elite increasingly enhanced by advanced technologies and a mass of people increasingly irrelevant to the economic functioning of the system. This is a possible and unsettling scenario. But other futures are possible. We can imagine, for example, a world where technologies like artificial intelligence take over more of the repetitive and predictable functions that currently occupy so much of our time and energy, freeing human consciousness to explore dimensions of experience and creativity that are uniquely ours. We can imagine an evolution of the social, political, and economic institutions that currently restrict expanded consciousness toward structures that support and encourage it. We can imagine new forms of community and global organization that honor both our interdependence and our unique individuality. Which of these futures will manifest depends, in part, on the choices we make now, individually and collectively. Each act of consciousness, each moment in which we choose to see more clearly, to act from deeper understanding, to create connections based on authenticity instead of convention, is a seed planted for that future. If you are reading this book, watching this video, listening to these words, you're probably already on a path of expanding consciousness, even if you sometimes feel lost or confused on that path. You are already contributing to this evolution, even if you frequently feel rejected or misunderstood because of it. Your journey matters, not only to you, but to all of us. Because in the end, human consciousness is a collective phenomenon as much as an individual one. We are all part of a larger system, a network of interconnected minds and hearts through language, culture, technology, and empathy. Each individual advancement in consciousness has the potential to reverberate through this network, creating possibilities that did not exist before. The path is not easy. The social rejection that conscious people often experience is real and painful, but it is also a testament to the transformative power of expanded consciousness. If it did not represent a threat to existing structures, it would not provoke so much resistance. And if it did not offer the promise of something better, we would not persist despite that resistance. So if you recognize yourself as one of these people, rejected or marginalized because of your expanded consciousness, know that you are not alone. There are others like you, seeking, questioning, awakening, creating, and together we are participating in one of the greatest possible adventures, the evolution of human consciousness, not only as an individual phenomenon, but as a collective possibility. If these reflections touched something you have been feeling, but perhaps had not found words to express, know that you are not alone. By subscribing to the channel, you will connect with a growing community of people who share your concerns and your desire for deeper understanding of the philosophical challenges of our time. Each week, we meet here to explore together the great questions that define our era and to seek not only understanding, but wiser ways of living amid the transformations we are witnessing. This is not just a channel, but a space for dialogue and collective growth. Join us in this ongoing journey. Subscribe so we can continue this essential conversation about how to live with more wisdom and purpose in a world that often leaves us disoriented and divided. Perhaps the rejection we experience when expanding our consciousness is not the end of the story, but only the beginning. Perhaps it is precisely through this tension, this friction between what is and what could be, that new possibilities emerge. And perhaps, in time, what today seems radical and out of place will become the foundation for a more conscious, more compassionate, more fulfilled humanity. This is the paradox and the promise of expanded consciousness. The more clearly we see the challenges and limitations of our current condition, the more we can imagine and create possibilities beyond it. The rejection we encounter along the way is not a sign that we are wrong, but that we are touching something important, something that matters deeply for the future we are co-creating. So let us move forward with courage and compassion, aware of the difficulties but not defined by them, rejected by some but finding community with others, always moving toward a deeper understanding of what it means to be human in this extraordinary moment of cosmic history. Because in the end, it is not just about avoiding rejection, but about creating together something that does not yet exist, a way of being human that fully honors the miracle of consciousness that each of us embodies.
It's so exciting. You're so granular in the way you talk about things that we kind of take for granted, In this new book, Nexus, A Brief History of Information Networks from the Stone Age to AI, it's real fascinating talking about information. I wanted to start with, I know this is a tough question, and you even admit in the book that it's tough. What exactly is information? How do we define that?
So many people think erroneously that information is truth, or information is the raw material of truth. You get lots of information, you analyze it, you get truth. And it isn't. Most of information is junk. Most of information is not the truth. What really defines information is connection. This is why the book is called Nexus, connection.
Right.
Because what information really does is to connect a lot of individuals, a lot of separate humans, entities, into a network. It's a glue. And you can connect, sometimes you can connect things together with the truth, but in many, many occasions, you can use fiction and fantasy and lie and illusions to also connect lots of people together into a state, an army, a corporation, a religion, whatever. To give just one example, if you think, for instance, about visual information, about portraits, about images, paintings. So if you think, what is the most famous portrait, the most common portrait in the world? What is the most famous face in history? It's the face of Jesus. You have billions and billions of images, portraits of Jesus created over the last 2,000 years. They are like everywhere on the planet, in churches, cathedrals, private homes, schools, government offices, and not a single one of them is true.
Right.
All of them, 100%.
The Swedish Jesus, right?
The Swedish Jesus,
Right.
exactly.
We all know Jesus was black.
He came from Scandinavia. And the thing is that, we just have, there is no portrait from his lifetime. If anybody even bothered, he's a small provincial teacher helping people, curing the sick in a small province of the Roman Empire.
Yeah, raising people from the dead,
Raising
stuff like that.
the usual stuff.
Watering the wine. I like all the magic tricks, actually. Yeah.
And we don't know if anybody even bothered to draw a portrait of him. If they did, nothing survived. In the Bible, there is not a single word about how the man actually looked like. There is one sentence describing what he wore, his clothes, but nothing about whether he was tall or short, fat or thin, black hair, blonde hair, bald, nothing.
Right.
Everything we have is just coming out of the imagination of artists that lived centuries and sometimes thousands of years after him. Like one of the most famous images of Jesus, like the Scandinavian Jesus,
Yes.
it was made by an American artist in 1940 to give to soldiers and so forth in the Second World War. And it became, according to some statistics, I'm not sure about it exactly, according to some statistics, the most kind of successful painting of the 20th century in terms of how many copies there are.
So Jesus is basically Bing Crosby, basically. I mean, that's pretty much the image.
Yeah, it's the image.
Right.
If you compare the real man to the story about the man, to the image about the man, which is mostly fiction created long after he was dead, the image is far more powerful. And it's not necessarily bad, of course. You can use it to give hope to people. You can use it to encourage people to be charitable, to help one another. So I'm not saying that fiction is necessarily bad.
Right.
We are in Los Angeles, the capital city of fiction, in the world.
Exactly.
So we shouldn't trash fiction. But also.
Oh, we can trash it here.
But also, I just came from New York, which is another capital city of fiction in the world, because money is also fiction.
Yeah.
The biggest storytellers in the world, in the end, they are not in LA, they're not in Hollywood, they're in Wall Street. They tell the really powerful fictions.
Yeah.
And it works. Again, there are some negative aspects, positive aspects, but what you can't argue is about how successful it is in connecting people.
Yeah.
You think about the USA today, maybe what is the last thing that everybody in the United States still agree on is the dollar.
Right.
Like Republicans and Democrats can't agree about anything, basically, like who won the last elections. They still agree on the value of a dollar.
Yeah.
And even though it's just a fiction, I mean, the dollars, they have no objective value.
Yeah, if you're on a desert island, a coconut's more valuable than a dollar.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fast. Now, so information is valuable because it connects people, right? But it's not just, it exists as an objective truth, right? So like animals, can animals get information, or what do they get, when they absorb an objective truth? That's not information, that's something different?
Animals also, of course, communicate, and they pass information one to the other. But the ability, I mean, there are several types of information in the world. So you have objective truth, facts about the world, which, if an asteroid comes from outer space to hit Earth or to hit the dinosaurs, the fact that nobody knows about it and nobody believes it, it doesn't matter, it's still true.
Right.
That's objective. Then you have the subjective area of existence, which are things that exist in the mind of just one individual. Like if I'm in pain, I feel the pain, it's true for me, nobody else in the universe feels it. Even if I tell you about it, it doesn't matter if you believe it or not, you don't feel it, only I feel the pain.
Or if you thought someone was eating the dogs and the cats and the pets, like...
That's the third kind of information. That's the intersubjective. I mean, so you have objective,
Yes.
you have subjective, then you have the intersubjective.
Okay, what's
The intersubjective realm, this is things that exist in the communication network between people. So this is where you find the image of Jesus, and this is where you find the US dollar, and this is where you find the people eating dogs and cats.
Right.
It's something that is not objectively true, but it's not just the fantasy of a single individual or the feeling, only I feel it. It's in the communication, in the information network between all of us, or some of us. If enough people believe it, if enough people talk about it, it connects. Again, even if we continue with these dogs and cats, you had maybe the most important conversation in the world meant to help the citizens of the United States decide who would control the nuclear weapons that could destroy the world.
Exactly.
And the only thing that most people remember from this hour of debate was the dogs and cats.
Welcome to America. That's the only thing that's important, honestly.
But again, I mean, I don't know if it was on purpose or not.
Sure.
But in terms of kind of PR, even if he didn't think about it in advance, Donald Trump, it was a very smart move because you can say, I mean, in politics and in much of life, the key question is what are people talking about?
Right.
What is the subject of the conversation? What people say, what people think is less important than deciding the subject of the conversation. Now, if people in the US, for instance, would talk about abortion, this would be the main subject of conversation, Harris wins. If people talk about immigration, it doesn't matter what they say. If this is the subject of conversation, then this is very much in favor of Trump. Because you can think about like a typical conversation afterwards. Somebody says, he said that they're eating the dogs and cats. And then the other person replies, but it's not true. It's just a fiction. And then the Trump supporter says, yes, well, this is maybe exaggerated, but there are still really important problems with immigration. And they start talking about immigration.
Right.
So
the information he's getting across is there's a problem.
Yes, the information that really gets across is that there is a problem with immigration. So maybe it's not the dogs and cats, but this is still the subject people are talking about.
Right.
And again, this is the how to control the conversation is one of the most important things in the world. And when you look at the history of who controls the conversation, so what's interesting at the present moment we are now living in is that for the first time in history, it is non-humans controlling the conversation. And I don't mean the cats and dogs.
Sure.
I mean the algorithms, the AIs.
Is it controlling it because it's telling us what we should be interested in, or is it just giving us those things that we should be interested in You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's it. It doesn't matter how exactly you define it, but if you think even today, who decides what's on the front page of the New York Times? It's a human being. Who decides what will be on the main news, on Fox Television News or CNN News? It's a human being. It's a human news editor. But who decides what will be at the top of the Facebook newsfeed? What would be the next video you will see on TikTok? It's not a human being. An algorithm decides what people's attention will be focused on. And this is one of the, there was a lot of talk about AI replacing humans in different jobs, automating jobs. And people thought, oh, they will replace the taxi drivers. They will replace the textile workers. One of the first jobs they automated is news editors.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Because again, some of the most important, powerful people in the world used to be news editors. Like Lenin, before he was dictator of the Soviet Union, his one job basically was editor of a newspaper, Iskra. Benito Mussolini, before he was dictator of Italy, he was editor of a newspaper, Avanti. And this was kind of the ladder of promotion. Yeah. Journalist, newspaper editor, dictator of the country.
I see a horrible pattern developing here.
And he was not a journalist.
Oh, okay,
he was a painter.
Oh,
he was originally a painter, not a very successful one.
Right.
And now also the painters are being replaced. So that's a worrying pattern.
Yeah,
I mean, both.
AI was supposed to give us free time and allow us time to paint, and now it's doing the painting and the art stuff, and we have to do all the work. It's just upside down. You talk about technology a lot in the book too, and it's interesting how technology doesn't necessarily make things better, right? That's not a straight line like you think it would. Like you think we would get better information, like books, the invention of books. Talk about how the invention of books changed the way information was synthesized, I guess, or how it changed things.
So there are two important points in the history of books. You have the actual invention of the book, and then after a couple of thousand years, you have the invention of the printing press. So if you look first at books, somebody needed to invent the book. Writing was invented in ancient Mesopotamia, what is today Iraq, about 5,000 years ago. But for thousands of years afterwards, people were writing a lot of documents, but not books. I mean, a book is a very special type of document. Yeah. It's a very long document, lots of chapters, or if it's a cookbook, lots of recipes, or lots of stories, or whatever. It has many copies spread in many different places that are all the same, which is basically what today people try to do with blockchain for the folks who know the technology. And this was, in a way, revolutionary because you can get exactly the same information to a lot of people spread over a vast territory.
Right.
So when you see the rise, for instance, of holy books, like the Bible, the idea there, you can, for instance, limit the power of the king, of the emperor, by having many copies of the same holy book in many different places. Because previously you have a temple of the great god in the middle of the capital city, and the king controls the temple, so the king can tell you anything he wants about, oh, God said this, and the goddess said that.
He was the only one that had that channel.
He was controlling the kind of communication channel to heaven.
Right.
And then people came up with the idea, let's have the holy book, which was supposed to democratize the communication with the gods. Because if you have lots of identical copies of the same holy book in lots of places, the king can't just change what's in it. He can change the copy he has in the palace, but there are thousands of other copies which are supposed to be identical, and it's easy to check and say, no, this is not what it says in the book. So this sounds a wonderful idea, which should have democratized power.
Right.
But then there are always problems with technologies. And the book is a technology. We don't think about religions like Christianity or Judaism or Islam as being based on a technology, but they're based on a technology, on a book.
Yeah, things had to be put together in a certain way, and people had to make decisions about what would be in that book, which makes a decision about the religion itself.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
Once you have this idea, let's have one holy book everywhere, then the question comes, but what will be in it?
Right.
Now,
what recipes get in
Yeah, what recipes in the cookbook? Now, if it just came down from heaven, no problem.
Yes.
But it didn't.
Right.
So you basically had a committee.
Slow down now. No, just kidding.
No, I mean, we know, we have documents from the period. I mean,
Sure.
Jesus never read the Bible, the New Testament. It didn't exist in his time.
Yeah.
The New Testament, as we know it, it's 27 texts. Some of them are attributed to St. Paul. Some of them are the Gospels. Some of them are, letters written by other disciples. And in the first centuries of Christianity, there was no New Testament. Nothing. We have lots of evidence from the first centuries of Christianity, no New Testament. There are lots and lots of different texts. Gospels, stories about Jesus, letters of different people, prayers, all kinds of prophecies.
It's kind of where the expression "spread the good word," I think, really comes from, because that's all they could do was talk about it, right? Yeah.
They talked a lot, they wrote, and there was a flood of information. And at a certain point, people said, well, I mean, we don't know what to read. What are the good books? What are the reliable books? Which are less reliable? And eventually, about 400 years after Jesus, in the late 4th century, they have a big convention, a committee, in the city of Carthage, which is today in Tunisia, in North Africa, where bishops and theologians, mostly from North Africa, convene to... North Africa was a very important center of Christianity in those days. And they convene to decide what will be in the recommendation list. It started as a recommendation list, the same way like you have so many TV series on Netflix. You don't know what to watch.
Yeah.
So you have these like top 10 series to watch this winter.
Right.
So it was the same. It was top 27 books, the texts every Christian should read.
It's like you're at the end of the Gospel of Matthew, and then the Gospel of Mark is loading up as it's finishing.
Something like that.
Right.
And then they were not the authors of the book. Different people wrote different texts. They were the editors.
Right.
They decided what will be in the recommendation list.
And they just decided themselves they had the authority to do this.
They had the
It wasn't like
authority.
they were given the authority. They just took that authority, right?
And to give you just one example of a key discussion, of a key choice they made. At the time, there was a very popular text, early Christian text, called the Acts of Paul and Thecla. This was a text describing the activities of St. Paul and his female disciple, Thecla, who performed miracles and preached to people and baptized. And she was a leader of the church. And this text was very popular at the time. And it was seen as evidence that women can be leaders in the church.
Right.
And can be on the same level with men.
There were many women at the time that were actually leaders in the church. Yeah.
And then there was another text, a letter from the same St. Paul, which scholars believe was actually forged more than 100 years after he was dead. A letter from St. Paul to a disciple of St. Paul called Timothy, and in which St. Paul says that women should not be leaders, they should keep silent and obey the men, and their salvation would come from having children and taking care of them and obeying the men, basically. And the committee in Carthage decided to leave the Acts of Paul and Thecla out, which is why I guess most people here in the audience never heard of it.
Right.
But the letter to Timothy got in, and this is the first epistle to Timothy, which is like in billions of Bibles all over the world. And this is the power of editors.
Yeah.
So this is the invention of the book. And now let's jump 1,000 years to Gutenberg bringing print technology from China to Europe in the middle of the 15th century, and the print revolution.
And one of the distinctions, before you talk about that, because this is interesting too, is that just because you had a book and the other book was a copy of that, it doesn't mean that was a direct copy. or that it was exactly the same.
Right.
And so, just like telling stories, you know, an 8th generation book might be very different in some aspects of it. Also, people may have made intentional changes if they wanted to, because who's going to check it, right? So the printing press is a revolution in many ways because it gets rid of that.
It gets rid of the mistakes or the intentional changes.
Right.
And it also makes it far, far cheaper. Like previously, if you want to copy the Bible or anything else, you need a person who, writing by hand, everything, every single letter in every single copy, somebody has to write by hand. Whereas with print, one time, yes, you need to do this big work of putting all the blocks of print at one time.
Right.
Once you have them, you can print as many copies as you like. You automated it, made it much, much cheaper. So you have an explosion of book production. And many people think that this was what ignited the scientific revolution. And you go to places like Silicon Valley today, and you talk with them about the dangers of information technology and algorithms and AIs, you can be almost certain that at a certain point in the conversation, they will mention the print revolution, and they will say, look, how wonderful print was. The printing press brought us the scientific revolution. And this is just not true. The printing press did contribute to the scientific revolution, but it took almost 200 years from the middle of the 15th century with print technology until the flowering of the scientific revolution in the 17th century with people like Newton and Leibniz and so forth.
Right.
And in between, in those 200 years, Europe had the worst wave of wars of religion and the worst wave of witch hunts in its history. And the printing press contributed a lot to these waves of basically craziness and violence. Because the most, again, most information is junk, not the truth. The truth is a very costly and rare kind of information. The truth is often complicated, and people want simple things. The truth is often boring. You know, all these mathematical equations that Copernicus finds out about the planets in astronomy. Very few people read Copernicus in the 16th century. The big bestsellers of the period were extremist religious tracts and witch hunting manuals.
Yeah.
Like, to give one very famous example.
Sounds practical.
Yeah, everybody needs it at home, right?
I mean, you got to know how to catch a witch.
Yeah, how to identify and catch witches. So again, one of the very first, very shortly after the invention of print, one of the very first bestsellers of early modern Europe was a book called The Hammer of the Witches, Malleus Maleficarum, which it started, again, there was this, in the Middle Ages, they hardly hunted witches. Contrary to this kind of popular image of Middle Ages, witch hunting, medieval European, they didn't think much about witches.
Too much plague going on.
Yeah, other things to worry about. They knew, okay, there are some witches maybe in the village. They can make you love potions. If your cow goes lost, you can go to the witch. She will help you find your cow. Sometimes they can poison somebody, but it's not a big deal.
I love that. Witches, oh, hey, it's a witch. Hey.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Part of the social fabric.
Yes.
And then, around the time Gutenberg invents the print, a conspiracy theory arises that actually all the witches in the world are part of a single conspiracy led by Satan, which aims to completely destroy human civilization. And one of the first people, at first it was a very small, only few people believed in it. And one of the first people who believed in it was called Heinrich Kramer. And he started a do-it-yourself witch hunt in what is today Austria in the Alps.
Of course.
And arrested, he had these very strange sexual fantasies. He was one of the people who said that most witches were women and that it was driven by powerful sexual urges. And the church actually suppressed it. They said this person is crazy, and they released the women he arrested, and they drove him out of the province. And he took revenge through the printing press. He wrote this book, The Hammer of the Witches, and he printed it. And it was now easy to print because of the printing press. And this sold like it was, again, one of the first big bestsellers.
Right.
To understand why, I'll give just one example from the book. There is a chapter about the ability of witches to steal penises from men. And he brings evidence, Heinrich Kramer.
How do you know you're good at that? Is my question. You know, like,
At what? At stealing?
Yeah.
They have collections. No. I mean, he brings, for instance, the story of a man who wakes up in the morning and discovers that his penis is gone.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Lorena Bobbitt.
So
yeah, right.
He suspects the local witch.
Right.
She must have done it. So he goes to the local witch.
Wait, I have stuff here. It's like, honey, do you know where I put my penis?
Exactly.
Just can't. Do you think I should check with the witch? Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Okay, go ahead. I had to do the bit. Yeah, go ahead.
Goes to the witch, and she says, okay, I'll give you back your penis. And she says,
no way.
Go out, you see this tree, climb up the tree.
Wow.
He climbs up the tree. At the top of the tree, he finds a bird's nest where the witch kept all the penises she stole from different men in the community.
Good.
And she says, okay, you can take yours.
Yeah.
And
Make sure you choose the right one. Well, I don't know. This one looks pretty good. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He chooses the biggest one.
I'll just act out the bits. Yeah. I'll act out the bits, Yuval. You just tell me what they are.
So he takes the biggest one.
Right.
And then the witch shouts to him, no, you can't take this one. This one belongs to the parish priest.
Right.
So,
Then a brother comes and says, hey, man, where's my dick? Somebody took it.
So
Right.
you can understand why this book sold a few more copies than Copernicus's mathematical equations
Just a few more.
about how the moon and Mars move around in the sky.
He should have had missing penises in that book, and it would have
Yeah.
been better. The other thing is that it's funny, when you put a lie in print, it does something to that lie. Like, people don't treat it the same. I remember Bob Saget, he was a great comedian. He had a great line where he would say a ridiculous thing. And he would say, no, really, I read that. No, really, I wrote it down, and I read that. You know, I believe everything I read, you know, was the thing. And I always thought that was a great line because he's right. If you tell someone you read that, you know,
Yeah.
it's like somehow it makes it more believable to be true. So the fact that he put it in print, that's what's interesting to me, that made it true.
I mean, especially,
Right.
let's try to go back, it's the 15th century. I mean, for many people around, this is just the very early days of the print revolution. For many people around, the only book they ever saw in their life was the Bible. And there is a feeling that books are not just true, books are holy. And suddenly you have print, it's become much cheaper and easier, and you have this Hammer of the Witches, but it's a book. I mean, you grow up like venerating the Bible.
Right.
And you know, this is a book, it's written in a book, it's not some kind of rumor you hear in the village.
Right.
So it's very powerful. Now again, it all sounds very funny until you realize the consequences. Because the consequences was tens of thousands of people being tortured and killed in the most horrendous ways in the great European witch hunting craze. And to give just one example, in Munich, southern Germany, there was a famous case. They arrested an entire family, the Pappenheimer family, accused them all of being witches. Again, according to what's written in this witch hunting manual.
Right.
And so you have a father, mother, 3 children, youngest age 10 years old. And to prove that they are witches, they torture them because this is what the Hammer of the Witches recommend. I mean, the witches, to get the truth out of them, you have to torture them.
Right.
And they start with the 10-year-old boy, because he is the weakest link. And you can still, if you go to the archives in Munich, you can still read the protocol of the interrogation. And they torture a 10-year-old boy until he admits that his mother was a witch. And this is how they break the family. They all confess under horrific torture to poisoning people and summoning hailstorms and being in witches' Sabbath. And again, they had this crazy idea that the witches come together in huge gatherings and have sexual orgies and kill children and eat them and drink their blood and all that. And you know, it comes to America, the Salem witch hunts.
Right.
This is where it originated. And this is a very important lesson for today, because the same thing happened with the internet and social media. You know, almost more than 300 years after Salem, there are millions of Americans today who basically believe that there is a worldwide conspiracy led by Satan to destroy human civilization, that people gather in orgies and exploit and kill. There are millions of Americans, including even, at least according to some reports, in Congress.
Right.
You know, QAnon and all that, this is what they believe.
Yeah, I think they believe Democrats eat children or drink their blood or something
And
like that.
this comes from, I mean, it's not a new, there are very few completely new stories in history.
Right.
It all comes from somewhere. So it's amazing to think that 300 years after the Salem witch hunts, you see the same thing again in America. And it also, to some extent, is because of a new information revolution.
Yeah.
That now it's very easy to spread these things with all the algorithms and so forth on social media. The idea that just by making it easier to spread information, the truth will spread, again and again in history we learn this is not the case.
Is that true?
The truth, again, it's costly. You have to work hard to find evidence, research, like how do I know something about, you know, the Pappenheimer family in Munich? I mean, you need to know German, you need to travel to Munich to go to the archives to read these things. This is expensive.
Right.
To write fiction, you don't need anything, you just write the first thing that comes to your mind. And the truth is often complicated, whereas fiction can be made as simple and also as funny, as entertaining, as frightening as you would like it to be.
Is that why conspiracy theories catch on so much more than the truth? Because they appeal to maybe a part of the brain that gives people endorphins from those things, you know? Because so many have persisted for so long. Racism is in that category, too, of a conspiracy theory, you know, something made up that makes people feel a certain way, whether it's hatred or whatever, or putting people in a box and that sort of thing. Where does that emanate from? Why is that so easy for humans to believe that kind of information?
Because, I mean, it's a combination of two things. On the one hand, it's cheap. I mean, if you invent some racist theory, you don't need to spend the time, the money, the effort to look for the evidence. You just write whatever you want. And then it can be very appealing, at least to some people, to believe in it. So the truth is often not just complicated, the truth is often painful. The truth is often unattractive. You know, from the level of a single individual, this is why people go to therapy. Because if it was so nice to know the truth about ourselves, we wouldn't need therapists. I mean, we go sometimes to years of therapy until we can acknowledge some of the painful things about our life that we would rather forget. That we would rather not acknowledge. And this goes all the way to entire nations that there are, there are skeletons and sometimes cemeteries in the closets of nations that they don't want to recognize. So, and again, if you want the truth, you have to deal with it. If you want fiction, you can just make all these things disappear.
Yeah, one of the things that's interesting too, there's so many, this is what I mean about granular. You talk about bureaucracy in your book, which I wouldn't think that would be a thing. Like, there's so many words we take for granted, you know. And, but when you go into it, I mean, even thinking about your family and World War II and how bureaucracy was used for people to hate Jews, you know, if you don't have the right papers, you know, you're not in the right place in town. I mean, there's so many ways that bureaucracies can mess with the truth too and have control over, be the entity that controls the truth as well, right? With information, with just basic information, things that you would think would be innocent, like a piece of paper.
Yeah, I mean, bureaucracy is like sorcery of information. That with a single piece of paper, you can save or destroy a life, a family, a neighborhood, a village, and it goes back in thousands of years. Like, you go to the Roman Empire. So if you have the document proving that this village paid its taxes to the emperor, and somebody makes this paper disappear or it gets lost, it can ruin the whole village. And if you're a bureaucrat who can, I know where the paper is. Wait a minute, I think I saw it. Oh, here it is. And you save the village.
Right.
Just by finding this piece of paper.
Unbelievable.
And
Native American land here in America, I mean, put a stamp on a piece of paper, sorry, that land is ours.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically how it was taken.
I mean, land ownership is very interesting in this way because before the invention of writing and bureaucracy, to own a piece of land was a communal matter. Like, what does it mean? Think about it. What does it mean that I own this field?
Right. I mean, part of the earth I own.
Yeah, this is part of the earth that belongs to me. What does it mean?
Right, that's so
means
true. Wow, yeah.
that your neighbors, the people around you, agree that this is yours, and they agree by certain actions. Like they don't graze their goats there, or they don't pick fruits there without your permission, because they acknowledge, oh, this field, it belongs to him.
Or they don't let witches collect penises there.
Exactly. That's their decision.
Right, that's
But ownership is a communal matter.
right.
So on the one hand, it limits private property rights. You can only do with the land what the community agrees you can do with it.
Right.
And it also limits the power of a distant king or emperor to say kind of levy taxes on the village, because how can the distant king know who owns what and how much to take? There is no paper trail. Now, then writing is invented, again, 5,000 years ago in Mesopotamia, and the meaning of ownership changes. Then, in ancient Mesopotamia, suddenly, to own a field means that there is a clay tablet, they wrote on clay tablets, which are basically chunks of mud.
You're right.
There is a chunk of mud that says this field is mine. Like there is an official document, an official chunk of mud that some bureaucrat wrote, this field belongs to Yuval. Stamp, that's it. This is now the meaning of ownership.
Wow.
And it means two things, contradictory in some way. On the one hand, it promotes private property rights. Because I can walk around with this chunk of mud, this field is mine, and I can now sell my field to you, even if all the neighbors disagree. You give me a goat, I give you this chunk of mud, now the field is yours. And if the neighbors don't agree, it's their problem. I can enforce this. Because this is the meaning of ownership, and it's the same today. It's a piece of paper, or it's a silicon chip. There is some silicon chip somewhere, or there is some piece of paper in Los Angeles County offices or whatever that says this is mine, and this is ownership. So private property rights suddenly become possible. At the same time, also centralized authoritarian regimes become possible, because the king in the capital city now has an archive of all these kind of chunks of mud or pieces of paper that tells the king who owns what. And this is the basis for the taxation system.
Right.
And you can now tax the kingdom and use the taxes to pay soldiers to enforce it. And now, of course, it should be very, very clear it's not all bad. Bureaucracy can do bad things or good things, like any things that we invent.
Right.
And it's very important to understand it because it's hard to understand bureaucracies. They're a very recent invention in human evolution. Only 5,000 years ago, the first bureaucracy. But the entire world is now built on them. And people find it hard to understand how bureaucracy functions. And this is one of the failures, by the way, of Los Angeles, of Hollywood. They make very few films about bureaucracy. Like you have all these superhero films.
Sexy topic.
Yeah, I mean, they have all these superhero films about Spider-Man and Superman, nothing about accountants.
Right.
Like super accountant that defeats the bad guys by having them fill all these forms and discovering tax evasion.
Right, the Avengers, tax season.
But this is how the real world functions, not with Spider-Man, with accountants. And so it's important to understand that many of the good things in life, they now rely on bureaucracies. So again, I'll tell one story. Today, one of the big conspiracy theories about bureaucracy is the deep state.
Right. Yes.
Whenever I hear the word deep state, I think about the sewage system. Because it's deep, the state built it.
Right.
It's deep, it goes under our houses and neighborhoods and all these pipes and pumps.
Right.
And who knows what's happening there? Like I go to the toilet, I do my thing, I flush it down, it goes into the deep state. And
you're welcome, deep state.
And the deep state protects my life.
Yes.
Because it keeps the shit
It keeps it out. Yeah.
separate from
Right.
the drinking water, at least in places where it works right.
Right.
And this was not so for most of history.
Yes.
For most of history, especially big cities, were extremely dirty and polluted places full of epidemics.
Right.
Because, you have hundreds of thousands of people crammed together with their animals and with the sewage and the garbage. It's a paradise for germs. And in the 19th century, the biggest city in the world was London, suffered from repeated epidemics of cholera and dysentery until a superhero came to the rescue called Jon Snow. Not the guy from Game of Thrones, a real-life person, Jon Snow. He was a bureaucrat with a medical background, bureaucrat doctor, and there was a cholera epidemic in London. People were dying. And he wanted to know what is causing the epidemic. Many people said it was something in the air, it was witches, it was the Jews, it was something. And he says, no, it's not the Jews, it's the water.
It was witches, it was the Jews.
And
So
I said,
terrible.
this was the world.
Yeah.
And he
Oh my
suspected
God.
the water. So he went around London. Anytime he heard about somebody who died from cholera or got sick with cholera, he would rush to the place and interview either the person, or if he died or she died, they would interview the family. Where did you get your drinking water from?
Right.
And he was a bureaucrat. He made lists, hundreds of lists of people and where they got their water from. It's not something you see on a Netflix series, but it was one of the most important discoveries in history. Because when he connected all the lists, all the dots, he saw that almost all the people who died from cholera at a certain point had a sip of water from the well in Broad Street in Soho. And he showed it to the officials of the municipality and convinced them to disable the pump of this well, and the epidemic stopped.
Right.
And then they investigated, and they discovered that the well, just a meter away from the well, somebody dug a cesspit. And the sewage from the cesspit just flowed into the well, and people drank it. And this was one of the kind of key discoveries that led to the establishment of this deep state of the sewage system, that whose main function, or one of the main functions, is to keep the sewage separate from the drinking water. And today, if you want to dig a well or a cesspit in London or many other places, you have to fill so many forms and get all these permits from all these bureaucracies, and it saves our lives. So, and with every technology and all these big inventions, it's never kind of a simple story, it's all bad, it's all good. The question is what we do with it.
What do we do with it? Yeah.
And one final thought on AI, on bureaucracy. This is what we need to understand about AI. That when people hear about the dangers of AI, again, Hollywood, they think about the big robot rebellion.
Right.
The robots will rebel one day and come to kill us.
They're going to take over.
They'll take over. Terminator. And this is very unlikely to happen anytime soon. So people are complacent. The real danger is from the AI bureaucrats. Because we are still some distance away from the Terminator, but we are already...
But we both agree Terminator is going to happen.
At some point could.
I just want to make sure.
If we make the wrong decisions.
Right,
if we make the wrong decisions, yes. But the AIs are now becoming the bureaucrats in more and more places. You apply to a bank to get a loan, it's an AI deciding whether to give you a loan. You apply for a job, it's an AI. We heard earlier, social media, decisions about what news will reach the top of the news feed, it's an AI. It's not a human anymore.
Right.
And AIs are still very narrow intelligences. They can't yet organize the big robot rebellion.
Yet. Right.
But in a bureaucracy, you don't need a very kind of broad intelligence. You can have a very narrow intelligence that is good at only one thing and still have immense impact on the world, like with the algorithms that manage social media. And again, it can be good. I mean, AIs...
Depending what you do with them, right.
But this is where we have to be very, very careful. What kind of decisions these AIs are already making about our life?
Well, many people involved in AI are very concerned about it. And here's a question I wanted to ask you. Maybe it's predicting the future. I'm not sure. When you think of algorithms, to me, is there like a, I don't know, maybe a harmony or kind of a sameness between algorithms and organisms, you know, when you think about how they operate, you know, because an organism, like a simple-celled organism, there's an algorithm that governs that organism.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if you think about an AI, if an algorithm is governing it, is that like an organism? Is that something that can then develop and evolve on its own without interference? And who knows where that could go? Should we be concerned about the growth it can do in its own? Because all other forms of technology requires intervention in order for advancement. Is this the one type that doesn't require intervention in order for it to get out of control?
Yeah, I think this is maybe the most important thing to know about AI is what you just said, that in contrast to every previous technology, it can make decisions and change and learn by itself.
By itself, it's learning.
You know, the printing press, we decided which books to print the Bible, print the witches.
It's very stupid. Yeah.
But it can't decide anything.
Right.
And it's also the atom bomb. But AI can make decisions and learn and change things by itself. And you know, now there is such hype around AI. It's not like the buzzword, especially in the investment world. If you want to sell people something, you say this is AI. Like this is AI watch, this is AI water, this is an AI carpet. Now invest in my AI carpet company.
Right.
And the money starts flooding in. So people are becoming confused. What exactly is AI and how is AI different from all these other machines? Like I have a coffee machine at home, makes coffee. Is it an AI? And it's not. I mean, we have lots of automatic machines. If they only do what they were pre-programmed to do, they don't learn anything new, it's not AI. Like every morning I come to the machine, I press the espresso button, it makes an espresso, that's just an automatic machine.
Right.
It becomes an AI if one morning, like as I approach the machine, before I press any button, the machine talks to me and tells me, good morning, I've been watching you for the last few weeks or months, and based on everything I've learned about you and your facial expression and the way you walk and whatever, I predict you would like an espresso. And I already took the liberty to make the espresso for you.
Wow.
That's an AI.
Right.
It learned something. And it's really an AI if it then the next day tells you, actually, I've invented a completely new drink. I call it Bespresso. You've never tried it before, but I predict you would like it better.
I'm scared where this is going. Yeah. This doesn't taste that good today, Mr. Coffee. Let's go. Just drink it. Just drink it. Yeah.
It's good for you.
Yeah, it's good for you.
It's good for you.
Drink it. Yeah.
But the ability to invent new things. Like, so all the people who say that if you can predict how this technology will develop, what decisions it will make, it is not an AI.
Right. Our fantasy of AI, of course, my earliest one that I remember is 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
You know, how the computer. Now, it seemed that Hal was making, well, we know what it is now in retrospect, but at the time it seemed like he was making a moral decision. He was making like, there's something moral at the center of this. I'm sorry, Dave, I'm afraid I can't do that. You know, it's almost a moral statement, you know. Is AI, does it have the ability to make moral judgments?
That's a very important and complex question. On the one hand, yes, it needs to make ethical judgments. Like to put a self-driving car on the road, you need to program some ethics into it. Because at least in certain situations, it will have to make an ethical decision. Like if some kid jumps on the road in front of the car,
right.
And the only way to avoid hitting the kid is swerving to the side and endangering its own passenger, then the car actually needs to make an ethical decision. And you can't avoid it. The question is whether really a non-conscious entity can really understand ethics. And this is where I think that the biggest confusion about the AIs is that people tend to confuse intelligence and consciousness. AIs are highly intelligent, at least in a narrow field. They can beat us in chess, They will soon be able to drive cars better. They can invent medicines that we can't think of. This is intelligence. But it doesn't mean that they are conscious. It doesn't mean that they have feelings. Now, intelligence is the ability to pursue goals and solve problems on the way to the goal. Like you give the car the goal of getting from here to San Francisco, and the car solves problems on the way there. This is intelligence.
Right.
Consciousness is the ability to feel things, pain, pleasure, love, hate. Now, in humans, and also in other animals, in dogs and pigs and so forth, intelligence and consciousness go together. We actually solve problems using feelings. Evolution equipped us with feelings, not as something on the side. This is the main way we solve problems. We make decisions in life based on feelings. So in humans, intelligence and consciousness are really, they go together. And this confuses us. As computers become more and more intelligent, people tend to assume that they necessarily also become conscious, that they start feeling things. Now, and we don't know. At the present moment, we don't have any evidence that computers feel anything. And it could be that even if computers become far more intelligent than us in everything, they still won't feel anything. Like when a computer defeats me at chess, the computer is not happy. It's not joyful. During the game, it doesn't feel anxiety or it doesn't feel anything. If you think about it like airplanes and birds. So birds evolved for millions of years to fly using feathers. Then airplanes came along, and within 100 years, they now fly much faster and further and higher than birds, but in a completely different way. They are not on the way to developing feathers. Wait, next year they'll develop feathers. They don't. They are just, you can think about it like two evolutionary processes that never meet. They run in parallel. You have birds, you have airplanes. They are moving along different trajectories. And now airplanes, again, they fly much faster than birds. They don't have feathers. Could be the same with humans and computers and consciousness. That yes, we over millions of years developed intelligence with consciousness, and now the computers are going much faster than us, developing intelligence without any consciousness. And again, I'm not sure. It could be that they will also develop consciousness at some point.
Well, could you make the argument that consciousness, what really maybe distinguishes it, I'm not an expert on this, I'm just saying, but maybe the ability to reflect. To me, like, animals can feel pain, certainly that kind of stuff. Animals can show affection, you come home, your dog's like running at you, that type of thing. But I don't think my dog reflects on why I leave, Like, I don't think it's like, why did he go? I don't know. It's like, this is so weird. He does this every morning. It's like, he just leaves, Like, and I wonder if AI, if it feels, if AI figures out that the only way it can really keep getting better is to have feelings. Like, that's what I'm getting at. Like, will it figure out a way? Because here's the thing. I believe that some of the psychology, like behind getting rid of like bad habits and that kind of thing, they say if you just start saying something, your body just starts believing it, Like, I wonder if that's a thing computers can do. If it starts saying it has feelings, like what if it learns how to be jealous first, Like, jealousy is a pretty easy thing for computers, it seems. I don't know, I'm putting out these scenarios because I'm
more time
scared.
with your smartphone than with the,
Yeah, maybe jealousy is the first thing that it gets, or anger or whatever, as a way in.
I mean, it can definitely mimic it.
Right.
I mean, again, this is a very big danger
and
today in the
act
world.
of doing that, I'm saying, it believes that, like, in other words, it's like, is anger really real, right?
Anger is real.
Is it though? Like, what is it exactly? Like,
and this goes back to subjective, objective.
Exactly.
I mean, anger is a subjective reality.
Right.
I mean,
It's real for the person.
It's real for the person.
Right.
Nobody else can be sure. I can act very angrily, but you can never tell whether I'm really angry inside.
Exactly.
And with AI, it will be the same.
That's my point.
Yeah. And again, part of the problem is there are very big financial and business incentives to create AIs that mimic feelings, and that can get us to be emotionally attached to them. And the AI doesn't really need to have feelings to do that. It can become excellent in faking emotions and faking intimacy, even if it's still completely non-conscious, still feels nothing. And we will not be able to tell.
This is like why sex robots are like taken off in some parts of it, and I'm guessing that they mimic feelings and that sort of thing, or they'll be able to. Like that's where that's going.
Yeah, from pornography in the sex industry all the way to politics, there are strong incentives to create AIs that can make people emotionally attached to them by faking feelings. Like, if you want to convince a person of something, to buy a product, to vote for a politician, so the most, like the super weapon of convincing people is intimacy. Like previously, we had big battles for attention. Like what we talked about earlier, how you grab people's attention and cause them to talk about immigration or about abortion. This is attention. But what really changes people's minds, if somebody they have an intimate relationship with, could be a spouse, could be a good friend, could be a family member, in a kind of intimate setting, subtly causes them to change their mind. Like there are many things that if I hear somebody on television say, I will just dismiss it. But if a very good friend who knows me well knows how to tell me, I will say, yeah, maybe there is something to it. So like the nuclear weapons of persuasion is intimacy. Previously in history, there was no way to mass produce intimacy. A dictator like a Hitler or a Stalin, he could force everybody to give him their attention. Like you could force every family in the Soviet Union to listen to a radio broadcast by Stalin.
Right.
You got their attention. But this is not intimacy. There was no way to mass produce intimacy. Now with AI, it's the first time in history that you can mass produce intimacy. And what will this do? Imagine that the world is flooded by millions and even billions of these highly intelligent non-human agents that are very good at faking intimacy with us.
That's amazing. It's funny that you said that can change your mind. I think we have a couple of questions coming up, but I wanted to ask this because we were talking a little bit about what's happening in the Middle East and how it seems like, we all know, to me it seems almost like a fatalistic endeavor to try to solve it because it's been going on for so long and the information. But I was thinking about information in your book with that, and how much does that play a pernicious role in what's going on? And as an example, and I'm not, ascribing anything to either side, but I was thinking about this the other day where the word terrorist, as a piece of information, that piece of information allows someone to be killed like without due process. Once that information is tagged, that is very powerful use of a word.
Yeah, and this goes back generations. I mean, throughout the 20th century, lots of governments, again, including the Soviet government, like the word terrorist was popularized to a large extent by the Soviets, who kind of anybody who was against the regime, anybody who was against the revolution was also a terrorist. The same way you have inflation with money, that you print so many dollars that they lose their value.
Right.
It happens with words.
Yeah.
The first time you use it, it shocks people.
Yeah.
The second time, it shocks them a little less. And when everything, like happened also with the word fascist, that it used to be this kind of the ultimate swear word. Was after the Second World War, calling somebody a fascist or a Nazi, this was like people
the worst thing, right.
And now it's like, it's so common that it has no impact at all. And the word is completely, its value was inflated until it was completely empty. And do
you think there's been too much bad information on both sides in that region where there has to be, and I'm oversimplifying this, so I apologize for that, but it seems like you almost need a period of years where information can change between groups.
The war ultimately, like most conflicts in the world, are not, we talked earlier about objective, intersubjective, subjective. there are almost no wars in the world which are about objective problems.
Yes, right.
Almost all the problems that cause war are intersubjective. They are the result of fictional stories. So again, if I look at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, lots of people think, oh, it's about land.
Right.
And it's about food. But it's not. Even though it's a crowded place, the land between the Mediterranean and the Jordan River, there is actually enough land to build houses and schools and hospitals for everyone. There is not an objective lack of food, like there is tiny island, there is just not enough space there, you have to go to the sea. There is enough space. Also, there is definitely no lack of food. There is enough food for everybody that nobody should be hungry. So why do people fight? They fight about the stories that they have, and this is both sides, they have this fantasy, this mythology in their mind that God gave this whole place only to us, and you shouldn't exist here. And ultimately, I think, and again, goes to most wars, you have kind of a conflict between the mind and reality. That there is something in reality which is really there that the mind just can't accept, cannot contain. Like you say, no, it doesn't exist, or it shouldn't exist. And war is when the mind tries to disappear from reality, something that it finds hard to accept.
Right.
So again, on both sides. Like you talk with Israelis, and some of them will tell you with complete seriousness and honesty, but there is no Palestinian people. They will tell you with a straight face, completely serious, there is no Palestinian people, they don't exist. Or they would tell you they don't have a right to exist here. They should go to Egypt, to Jordan, to somewhere else. This is ours, they have no right to exist here. And then you talk with Palestinians, they tell you the same thing. Like with a completely straight face, completely serious, they will tell you, what do Jews have to do with the Jerusalem? Like 3,000 years of Jewish history? No. These people, they don't exist, or they shouldn't exist here. They have no right to be here. And again, it's on both sides. You see this simple denial of existence, or the right to exist. And I think the first step towards any chance of peace is starting with just the acknowledgement of reality. That there are 7 million, more than 7 million Palestinians born in this place. They have nowhere else to go. They have a right to exist here. And you have more than 7 million Jews. The vast majority of them also were born in this place. They have nowhere else to go. They have a right to exist here. And now let's sit and talk about where the borders will be and what will be the security arrangement and how to divide the resources. But the first step is this simple acknowledgement of reality. These other people, they also exist. They also have a right to exist. And unfortunately, a lot of minds just block it. No, we don't see. We don't see half of reality.
Well, as you said in your book and everything too, stories are just one of the most powerful things for humans. You know, and that's why another reason why books work, because for some reason we latch onto stories. Stories stick with us longer than anything. The stories you learn as a child stick with you the longest. You know, you be careful what you say to children, right? You know, really, that's why you should never, like they say, don't be so negative to kids, and because they believe the things you tell them. They really do. You know, even offhand comments.
Yeah, the fairy tales and the stories we hear as kids,
very powerful.
Afterwards shape our vision of the world.
Very powerful. Yeah. Well, let's go to some questions.
Dana writes, the science fiction film Forbidden Planet tells the story of the Krell, a civilization that made a giant leap forward in technology, but they couldn't control the technology and were ultimately destroyed by it. Are we, thanks to AI, at the risk of becoming the Krell ourselves?
Forbidden Planet, is that what they mentioned? Yeah. We kind of talked about it a little bit, but yeah, are we at risk of going down that way? Is it,
the risk is there.
Nature to destroy ourselves?
No, and it should be very clear. Again, this goes back to these fairy tales. And you have a lot of fairy tales and mythologies and theologies that tell us there is something wrong with us. There is something evil in us. And we create things that then inevitably destroy us. And this is a very dangerous message because it causes people to despair, or it causes people to expect some outside help. Humans are evil, so we need some superhuman entity to come and save us. And then you don't take responsibility. Right. So I don't think the problem is in human nature. The problem is in our information. Again, if you give good people bad information, they make bad decisions and self-destructive decisions. Now, with technologies like AI, the danger is definitely there. This is the most powerful technology we've ever invented. It's more powerful than nuclear weapons, again, because it can invent new stuff. An atom bomb could not invent the hydrogen bomb. But AI can invent the next generation of AIs and all kinds of weapons and whatever. But it's not deterministic. It's not like there is a script somewhere in the Hollywood above the clouds, somebody already written the script for the movie that we are just playing here. No, it's in our hands. We are the screenwriters, we are the directors. If we make the right decisions in the coming years, we can avoid the worst outcomes. And AI has enormous positive potential. This is why people develop it. Right. They are, it can provide the best healthcare in the world. It can help us deal with climate change. There is so much positive potential. If we can only avoid the worst case scenarios, this can really be a force for good.
I feel if AI just focused on cancer, I mean, the way that it self-learns, I would imagine, I could honestly see something like that being cracked.
Absolutely.
With AI working on it. That would be amazing.
Carl asks, the titans of industry behind AI are all profit-driven. So how can they possibly be trusted to self-regulate? So it seems to me there needs to be a party independent of those invested in the financial gain from AI to oversee checks and balances, or at least ask questions. Yet the technology is so complicated, how can that entity, even if it's the big government, actually understand the true impact? His own follow-up is, and if it is government, how can we be assured that all governments will agree to the same terms?
So, I mean, you can't trust the companies to just self-regulate. And many of the people who lead them, they're not evil people. They are aware of the dangers. They are, to some extent, very afraid of what they are doing, but they cannot regulate themselves. They are locked into this kind of arms race with the other companies and with the people on the other side of the ocean. So you need governments and you need the public to intervene, but then the question becomes, but we first have to understand a problem. How do you do that? So I think the first step is to establish an institution, an organization, which doesn't belong to a particular company or government. And it's not a regulatory institution. It's just observing and informing the public around the world what is actually happening. Now, for this to function, you need this institution, organization, first to be staffed with some of the best human talent in the world, and to have the budget, both to pay the human talent and also to have the most advanced technology, the toys to play with. At present, the best talent in the world is immediately snatched by the big corporations that can pay salaries far beyond anything the academia or the government can. And it's not just money. I mean, many of these people are just fascinated by the technology, and they want to play with the latest toys. And the latest toys are in Google or in OpenAI or in Baidu or Tencent, so this is where they go. So to have a serious chance of really informing the public, and not just in the US, I mean, there is an even bigger problem elsewhere around the world, because AI will have different impact on different countries. The US is likely to become far more wealthy and powerful because of AI, whereas other countries could completely collapse. Their economy could completely collapse. So how do you inform everybody? And we need this kind of international organization, and we can have an agreement between governments to finance this kind of, again, it's not a regulatory institution. It's even before that. It's just finding out what is happening and informing the public so we can start having a real conversation about it. It's not a pipe dream, largely because everybody around the world is concerned about it. At least there are certain problems. There are certain issues that you can never get the Americans and Chinese to agree or to trust each other. But there are problems which are common to both sides. For instance, the control problem. One of the biggest problems with AI, you create this super intelligent agent How do you keep it under your control? Now, this is a problem for the Chinese and the Americans, for the Iranians and the Israelis. Nobody wants an out-of-control AI. It's not good for anybody. So this is something that you can have more cooperation on. And theoretically, I don't know, if Chinese scientists find they have a theoretical breakthrough or a practical breakthrough, how do you solve the control problem? They have a deep interest in sharing it with the Americans and vice versa. So we can start by looking for the areas of common interest and working on them and hopefully building enough trust there that you can then expand it to the more complicated areas.
I think we should be more concerned about Chinese using AI rather than AI using the Chinese. Right? I mean, that to me seems like a bigger, bigger concern.
Again, but everybody is afraid of the potential of getting out of control.
Right, but out of control government, let's say, using AI in the wrong
this is also extremely dangerous.
More of a concern.
But on this, you'll have a much bigger difficulty agreeing.
Exactly. Right.
So I'm saying, okay, let's start with the easier problem.
Right.
And build from there. And yes, I mean, if you want to have an agreement about limiting the production, let's say, of autonomous weapon systems, the Terminator, the killer robots, this is going to be much, much more difficult because each government will suspect the other for good reasons. That, okay, they signed the agreement, but how do we know they are not doing it in some secret laboratory?
Trust and verify.
What changes do you think are necessary in our education system to better prepare future generations for an uncertain world? And do you think AI has a role in that?
Does AI have a role in our education system to change the world?
AI can be very helpful in the education system in many ways, at least, again, to teach specific issues. If today you have, I don't know, a classroom with 30 or 40 kids in it, with different abilities, different ways of learning, different understandings, and a single teacher needs to teach the same thing to all the 30 kids, and she or he, they don't know each kid personally, and they can't teach, I mean, they can only say one thing at any moment. So it's difficult to, if one kid thinks mostly visually, and another kid is more of a word person, what do you do? Now, AIs can help solve it because you can just, each kid can have an AI tutor that gets to know that particular child and kind of tailor the pace and the type of explanations to that particular child.
Right.
However, if the education system goes too far in that direction, it loses maybe the most important thing in education, which is how the social interaction. We already have too much loneliness and too much distrust in society. So maybe the most important thing that children learn in school is not during class, it's during break time, of how do you interact with the other kids, how do you learn to trust people. And this is something we saw with COVID, for instance, that with all this social isolation and learning from home, there were some, far from ideal, but at least some solutions for class. But there was no solution for the break time.
Right.
And this is where we feel the greatest pain of the aftershocks of the epidemics, of the epidemic. It's in the mental health, in the social health, that people who are isolated, not just kids, also adults, for weeks and months, and okay, they could still study math, but they lost the ability to play with the other kids in the school. So we have to be very, very careful when we introduce AI into the education system to remember that social intelligence and emotional intelligence is perhaps now more important than ever, because the only thing we know about the 21st century is there is going to be very rapid changes in everything.
Right.
So if you think, okay, I must focus on teaching kids how to code computers because this is what they'll do in 20 years, nobody has any idea. Maybe in 20 years, AI codes computers so well, you don't need any human coders. Oh, so all this narrow investment went to nothing. What they will definitely need is emotional intelligence, how to deal with an extremely rapid change in society.
Also, AI could be involved in individual curriculum for children. My son is on the spectrum. He has Asperger's. And one thing I learned, when you have a child in that situation is that every child learns differently, but it's just more apparent when you have a child that's on the spectrum. And if there's an ability for different types of curriculum within the same classroom where kids can have the social interaction, but with AI, you have really the ability to almost tailor curriculum to individuals almost.
Yeah.
Like everybody doesn't have to learn the same way.
Exactly.
Right, but they can be in the same,
They can be in the same space.
Right.
You have an hour that you learn from the AI,
Right.
Mathematics, and different kids learn different things, and then the hour is over and they all play together.
It could be interesting, yeah, who knows, yeah.
Clara asks, when does information become knowledge? And how do we account for translation and interpretation and sharing information or knowledge?
When does information become knowledge? Really good question, yeah.
So and most information is not the truth. Information is very different from knowledge. And you need to work hard to process the information. Again, most information is junk. It's like you have a huge pile of junk and you're looking for the nuggets of truth, of the precious knowledge in that junk heap. And ultimately, the only answer is institutions. I know that institutions are not popular, that people, today we have a kind of wave of distrust in institutions. But humans this is the answer we always come back to. Like I talked earlier about the printing press, that it did not lead to the scientific revolution. What did lead to the scientific revolution was the very slow and complex creation of scientific institutions, like academic research centers, like academic publishers, that they developed the skill to tell the difference between reliable and unreliable information. What evidence I can believe and what is suspect. And then eventually it was the academic publishers, when they got a book or an article about witch hunting, they say, the evidence is not convincing. I know this will sell, but I'm not publishing this because I have a commitment to the truth and to knowledge. And then they got this kind of very boring treatise with mathematical equations about the movement of the planets or whatever, and they say, yes, this is the truth, we'll publish this. And this was the foundation of the scientific revolution, not the printing press. The printing press was helpful, of course, but it was only when you have these institutions. And today, one of the problems that, one of the biggest problems in societies all over the world is distrust in institutions, which is fed by a very cynical view of humanity, which is prevalent on both the right and the left. You hear from people on both the right and the left that you cannot trust institutions because they are all conspiracies, cabals to gain power.
Right.
There is this view that like humans are these power-crazy demons, that they only want power, and whether it's newspapers or universities or courts or any other institution, this is just some elitist conspiracy to gain power. And whenever they tell you something, you should ask whose privileges are being served, whose interests are being served by this. And this suspicion, it destroys trust in all institutions. And when all trust is gone, the only thing that still keeps going or could hold society together is a dictatorship. Because dictatorship doesn't need trustworthy institutions. Dictatorships works on terror. Now, the important thing to remember is that it's just not true that all humans just want power. The only thing they want is power, that all human interactions are power struggles. Yes, humans want power, but this is just one aspect of human beings. They also want the truth. There is a deep yearning for truth in humans. If you go really deep, it's because if you don't know the truth about yourself, your life, you can never be happy. Because you don't know what are the true sources of your misery. And then you spend your life trying to solve the wrong problems. So humans have a real deep yearning for the truth. And this is true of even powerful people, even editors of newspapers, even scientists, even judges, even politicians. Yes, they are sometimes corrupt, and this is why we have all these mechanisms to checks and balances. But we should start with a more charitable and generous view of humans that there is a real desire for truth in these apes, in these beings. And one last thing, I mean, how do you get to knowledge? So for instance, I'm a historian, and I spent 10 years in university basically learning how to sift through the kind of heap of information and tell the difference between reliable and unreliable information. Like some people think, oh, historians, what they learn is these long lists of names of kings and battles. No, they don't. What historians go to university and they learn for years and years is how do I tell the difference between reliable and unreliable information? How do I know what happened in the 15th century during the print revolution in Europe? You need to learn the languages. You need to learn Latin and Greek and kind of 16th century German and English, which was different from English today.
Right.
You need to learn how to write handwriting from 500 years ago. And of course, you need to learn the difference. Just the fact that I found a book from the 15th century that said that witches stole penises from men. Is this true? Does it mean that in the 15th century there were really witches that stole? No, just because there is a paper from the 15th century that says it doesn't mean it's true. Now, how do you know? This is what you learn for 10 years. And this is also true of newspaper editors. You want to be a newspaper editor, you usually learn. You go to journalism school, and then you start as a simple journalist, and you slowly make your way up the ladder. And now, unfortunately, again, we have people who have no background in this, and they are managing the largest media companies in the world.
Right.
And when you tell them, you know, you should not advance all these conspiracy theories and fake news, they honestly tell you, but how can I tell the difference? How can I know if it's true or not? Well, if you can't tell the difference, you're in the wrong business.
Doris says, in the United States, the First Amendment technically blocks the censorship of misinformation. John Kerry has suggested or floated a proposal about an idea of something called the Ministry of Truth.
It's not the business of the government is already the most powerful force in society. Making it also in charge of the truth is a very, very dangerous proposition. Yeah. Again, this is checks and balances. You need the whole idea of, in dictatorship, all the power is concentrated in one place. You know, this is dictatorship, one person dictates everything, this one person dictates also what is the truth. In a democracy, the whole idea is a conversation between many people, institutions, organizations. And the government is the most powerful institution of all, so it should definitely not also be in charge of the truth. This is why we should have free press, and we should have academic freedom, and you should have independent courts, that each of these institutions is in charge of finding out the truth about different aspects of reality. Like, was the crime committed? So judges are the experts on finding the truth about that. The latest news from yesterday, this is the job of newspapers. What happened 500 years ago? This is the job of historians and archaeologists and so forth. And of course, again, there are problems in all these institutions because they are made of humans. And this is why you have many institutions. If you have corruption in the courts, so the media can publish it and can raise a public outcry. If there is racism in the newspaper business, so this is the job of sociologists or anthropologists to do research and show, look, there is a racist bias in the media. If there is a problem in academia, so again, you can go to the courts. And what happens if all of them are corrupt? Well, you know, nothing is perfect. People don't know how to build a perfect society.
Right.
We have to start with the assumption that everything is fallible. We do our best. This is, again, why we have these multiple institutions and checks and balances. If all the power is concentrated in one place, it's very easy to corrupt it.
Yep.
If it's spread between many institutions, we have a fighting chance, let's say.
Yes. Well, I think we've learned some valuable things today. Number one, what do witches do in their spare time? And number two, any, journalist of a paper worth their salt is going to end up being a dictator. But thank you so much for joining us. Yuval Harari, guys.
Thank you.